people are responding to the Republican message, and we've seen that with the election of 14 TDs. A lot of people in this hall have been out, not just over the last number of weeks, probably over the last 4 years, and are delivering our message and are hearing the message from the voters on the ground. It shows that our strategy for Irish unity and independence is working. 2 weeks ago, I was part of a delegation with others in this hall who met up with our 14 TDs in the Assembly. With the Sinn Fein MLAs and the 14 TDs, again, to me that was a historic occasion, that we clearly showed that we were an all-Ireland party. We're the only party that can claim to be an all-Ireland party. This year we will be commemorating the 30th anniversary of the hunger strike of 1981, where we've seen the sacrifice of our 10 comrades who died in hunger strike. And I also want to give a special mention to those in the hall who are here, who are families and friends and comrades of our fallen comrades, and I think it is important to recognise them. The hunger strikers showed that our struggle is unbreakable, that we will not be criminalised, isolated or silenced. Republicanism today is more popular than at any point since partition, and we move forward with confidence. Now let's talk about our next battle. The elections to local council and the Assembly is on Thursday the 5th of May, which everybody knows is the 30th anniversary of the death of our comrade Bobby. This marks a significant date in the calendar of republicanism. Let us make no mistake, this is an important election, and the voice of the community, our community, must and will be heard. While we've seen in the media, and we've seen from some unionist parties, indeed them all, they're engaged in a sham fight over the title of First Minister, we in Sinn Fein are more concerned with delivery. The real issues in this election are the creation of jobs, the protection of existing jobs, and the effective privatisation of vital services. Sinn Fein is totally opposed to the Tory cuts. They will and can and have had a negative impact on our communities, and they won't aid economic recovery. And a lot of activists in this hall, including our elected activists, were at the recent trade union rally because we support the trade union's call against the cuts. The budget recently adopted by the executive contains several measures aimed at countering the blow where the British government stole £4 billion out of our block grant. And through the work that Sinn Fein and others were involved in, we were able to claw back and bring in another £1.6 billion. And that actually has a knock-on effect on the stuff that Sinn Fein says we will be delivering on. So while there is cuts ahead, we're doing all in our power to ensure that them cuts won't hit vital frontline services.
We've obviously big things going on in the city here. We have a number of targets electorally. We are going into this election. We're 14 councillors in Belfast. We want to improve on that substantially. I'm getting all my S's out and everything, it's great. We're going for an extra seat in the Callan, no West Belfast. You know we're going for an extra seat in Balmoral, the Strand, the Old Park. We have a number of candidates in Glen, sort of Gormley, a Lagan Valley, a Castlereagh. The normal boundaries are being pushed out. We're into the outer environs of Belfast. Republicanism in Belfast is growing and growing, election by election. After the election in the south, as Sue referred to, there are now on near 400,000 voters for Sinn Fein in Ireland. Republicanism in Ireland has never been as strong as it is today in terms of evidence, facts. A very clear election result in the south is a clear sign of the strength and the growth of the party in the south. But we can't expect that to shine north. We will be regarded and valued on the basis of our own work. We have excellent councillors, we have excellent activists, our structures are solid, they're growing. Our MLAs are second to none. We have proved ourselves as a party in government. We have brought, even in relation to the recent recession, a very radical view of how you deal with a British government that should not be in this country, providing us with £4 billion of cuts, and how we grabbed that and had a radical, we dragged every party in the Assembly away from all the natural, usual responses in terms of landing the £4 billion deficit on the section of our community who are least able and the least organised to deal with it. We brought a new focus to different aspects of where we would make that up, and we actually saved, we were the drivers that saved 1.6 billion within that within that cuts. We opposed the cuts in the south because they were about repaying the bondholders and the banks. We opposed the Tory cuts because they were savage, and we grabbed the deficit that they give us and made as much of a positive out of it as possible. That's leadership, that's republicanism, looking after its people on the ground, looking into a system to see where the bureaucracy is and removing it and tightening it up. So the last 4 years has been a learning curve. We predicted at the beginning of this Assembly term that we would be getting into a tumultuous 4 years, trying to bring a sobriety, driving the equality legislation, the thing that unionism dreads the most, the EQIA approach to everything legislatively, means that there will never again be an unequal approach, an unequal measurement given to anything that's agreed and becomes law, rules or legislation in this country. Coming out of that Assembly term, we're 4 years more experience. We have plenty of experience getting out of this next term, and we will be getting hopefully with more Assembly members than what we have presently. You listen to unionism at the minute, and they're trying to be clever about how they're going about that usual. They made a mistake publicly in Fermanagh, south at Tyrone. Well, they made a mistake generally. They put it up to us and we slapped the life clean out of him. Michelle came home, ramped home brilliantly. What they're trying to do now, what they're trying to do now is organise themselves in a way. They're not out screaming about orange unity and all of that, but what they are doing is they are coming up with mergers and systems that allows them to work a unionist pact as much as possible, and we need to be clear as possible about that. Coming out of this election, we intend to do great things in Belfast City Council. We intend to be the second largest party in Lisburn Council, and I'd like to welcome Mary Kate as well into our structures. I'm sure she got a round of applause earlier. And overall, and we are also taking a seat that was gerrymandered office in the Glen Gormley area. So we have a lot to do. We are very strong. We intend getting stronger. This room and rooms like it are the people that's going to do it, not only in terms of election, but also in terms of activism. So let's look forward to a fantastic election and another term of 4 years of hard work.
This is the first time, as Sue has said, actually the first time I've spoken here in West Belfast since I was elected as a TD for Louth and East Meath. And many of the people here were at some of the meetings when we discussed that initiative and thrashed it out and tried to make a bit of sense of it in the context of West Belfast. But of course, it was never just in the context of West Belfast. It was and remains to be about Sinn Féin's All-Ireland project, about Irish unity, about ending partition, about building a republic, and about building a political party across this island which is capable of doing that. And I think we were vindicated in the election. We returned 14 TDs, 14 Republican TDs, and half a dozen others missed seats by hundreds of votes. So we have moved on very, very, very substantially, and we have a brilliant team of people. Obviously, there's a lot of work to do. Never was Republican politics more necessary in that part of the island as it is at the moment. So I want to thank people from here. People from here went and worked in the election. We know right across the state that there was twinning by northern activists and southern activists, and I know that people here from West Belfast worked in Dublin and particularly in Louth. So thanks for that, and I hope you took some succour out of being involved in such a big breakthrough. So Gora Mila Mila, my August and August Bajer, Cahi Shiv, Bula Bus, More, a Hort, Steve Fein, Lagan Am Shaw. Meanwhile, back on the ranch, we're fighting another election here in the city and here in the very historic constituency of West Belfast. And it's two elections together. It's local government and it's the Assembly. So what we're doing this time in many ways, we're standing on a record. We're saying to people, this is what we have done. You elected us, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago, and this is what we have done. This is our record in the Assembly and our record in Belfast Council. And I think it is a very, very fine record indeed. And one of the things that I love about the process of change that we're involved in is that young people take it for granted. And sometimes older people will say, them young ones, they take everything for granted. And I think that's great. I think it's absolutely terrific that there are so many of our youngsters being educated through the medium of the Irish language in this constituency, and that's taken for granted. I think it's such a powerful thing to watch the leadership of Martin McGuinness and the other people in the executive, bringing unionism always along a path towards equality. I think it's brilliant to see how people have not just a sense of confidence in themselves, but that they can invest in a political project which is going places and over which citizens have control. So if we look at the broad picture in terms of what has been achieved in the Assembly, first of all, this is the first time ever that a term of joined-up government based upon equality has been concluded. And look at what the SDLP and the UUP did. And Sinn Fein, that's all you can say about it. You can't actually explain it much or elaborate on it or give much details. And look at how many times it collapsed during that period. And people said that we would not get the DUP into government with us. And we said, and I said at meetings like this a few years before we did it, that we could get the DUP into government with us, and that we could move forward on the basis of everybody being treated as citizens and everybody being treated with parity of esteem and equality. We began to get after decades, and remember the first time our people went into the councils? Remember the first time, those of you who are old enough, the first time Alex Maskey went into the council? They disbanded all of the committees. They stood down all of the committees. They did all sorts of mad stuff. They played trumpets. They spread people with air conditioners. They were offensive. They put a bomb in the Sinn Fein office. So we've come through all of that. And a lot of our people, including our elected representatives, our candidates, and very particularly some of their family members were killed in the course of all of that. But if you look at one little example of the under-provision of playing facilities for Gaelic games, for camogie, for football and for hurling, and that's been a historical discrimination across the city, but working in unison with local common law class Gael, working with local groups, we've exposed and helped to highlight the inequalities in council provision, and we have brought about a strategy to correct that. So this year we helped to negotiate a £10 million fund to start funding a strategy of playing pitches and changing facilities. And we're going to continue on that focus. We negotiated another £100 million development for landmark projects across West Belfast. And this isn't a standalone project. We hope to try and use it to give people physical evidence of the transformation of this part of the city. And one of the big breakthroughs in equality is the future development of Casement Park to make the second largest Gaelic sports stadium outside of headquarters at Croke Park and Dublin, and not just for County Antrim but for the province of Ulster, and then the development of that entire part of Andersonstown as part of all of that. There's a need for jobs. There's a need for our young people to have work with proper terms and conditions. There's a need for us to have a better environment in which we live, both a built environment and a use of public spaces and all of the rest of that. There is an ongoing need to continue on this historic mission of uniting orange and green, of bringing about, and here we are on the Roddies, Wolfe Tone's famous idiom of the unity of Catholic, Protestant and dissenter, of building a republic. And it's been my contention for a very long time that we won't build a republic in one big act. It won't happen, we wake up one day and there, all of a sudden it's there. It's built every day. It's built by bringing about a critical mass of people who want that. And that's how we'll get rid of partition. But unlike the system we have currently in the south, which is a republic in name only, we will have a republic based upon very, very core republican principles. We have a brilliant election machine. We know what we're doing. Let's get out. The most important thing any of us can do in the next very, very short period is to mark Bobby's anniversary with the biggest victory ever yet in this constituency of West Belfast and Lisburn. So let's go and do it. Go to Mila Mila Margov.
The slogan for this election is leadership across Ireland. And I think we're at a point now in our project, in our struggle, where we can genuinely say that we are providing that leadership right across the country. In councils, county and town, in the Assembly, of course, and in the Dáil. And nobody here should underestimate the kind of change, not just for us as a party, but for the body politic in the 26 counties and for the Dáil itself, the big difference and step change that having 14 Republican TDs has brought. When you hear Sinn Fein voices from Dublin, from Cork, from Kerry, from Cavan Monaghan, Donegal, Meath, Sligo, Leitrim, Laois Offaly, and of course Louth, stand up and articulate a message, a politics and a vision of Ireland that is so different to the stale status quo, that's so different to the same as politics of the other political parties. And Gerry addressed the Dáil. He's given you a rundown on some of the really critical issues that he's raised. But for me, the key moment so far has been when he reminded the Chamber that, of course, he wasn't the first Belfast man to be elected to the Dáil. And he recalled, in particular, Kieran Doherty, and you could feel that moment in the Chamber. Of course, our political opponents would prefer that we weren't there. They'd certainly prefer that we weren't there in such numbers, but we are. And we're there to do a job. We're not there to make up numbers. We're there to argue and to fight for the Republic, for a genuine Republic that is 32 county wide. A Republic that serves the women, the men and the children, north, south, east and west in our country. What delayed us today was largely because we had the latest results from what's called a stress test of the banking system in the south, and it made very, very depressing reading. They're planning to pump a further 24 billion euros into the banks. And it's pretty shocking. It's a shocking figure, but it's all the more shocking when you consider all of the cutbacks and all of the hardship that that action is going to entail. Because people all across the southern state have endured massive and really vicious cutbacks and a real assault on people's quality of life. Not alone do people not have work, and in many cases not the prospect of work, but their services too have been cut. And it's interesting when you contrast what happened down there as against what happened up here. Up here, in Sinn Fein ministers and MLAs, you had people prepared to fight the fight on behalf of the people, prepared to stand up against cutbacks, prepared to say to the British that the cut to the block grant was not acceptable and to make the argument, prepared to find new ways of raising monies to offset the worst of that British-led assault on people's quality and standard of life. Down south, the opposite has happened. The EU and the IMF have been embraced by the big political parties. And the race to cut back and cut even further is worn almost as a badge of honour by the Fianna Fáilers and the Fine Gaelers and Labour Party in government now. And we've pointed out to them the irony of it, that in the south of our country, powers are given away so freely and so lightly to outside influences, whereas in the north of the country, politicians, Sinn Fein representatives fight and argue to get those same powers back to Ireland and from Britain. For me, Sinn Fein being led into the Dáil by our party president in a very critical way underlined just one of the distinctions between ourselves and the SDLP. Whereas they may choose to go to a foreign parliament, to take their seats in Westminster, the leader of Sinn Fein is in the Dáil, in Dublin, making the argument, making the case for unity, for an end to partition, and for the Republic. Go raibh míle maith agaibh.